What's up, football fans? You're tuned into a special episode of Necessary Roughness. Just a quick Thursday night football recap. Football is back, and we had a pretty good game. A 1 point game that went down to the wire. That's all you can really ask for on Thursday night. Tough to stomach for some Chiefs fans, though, right? So we're going to jump into what we can make of both of these teams going forward now. The first two teams that we saw play football this season in the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. So it was ugly, and the elephant in this particular room when talking about this game is the pass catchers for Kansas City. It was really, really difficult to watch. Without Travis Kelsey, you did expect a little bit of a drop off, right? Just Mahomes not having that safety blanket, that security valve to dump things off to when the play breaks down and get 10 yards after the catch, and sit down in the right spot and find the soft spot in the zone. You didn't have that. You didn't have Travis Kelsey. Uh, Thought we might see a big uptick in production from a guy like Noah Gray, who I can't pull the play up yet. Maybe I could find it on Twitter here, but you know what? I'm going to try to because it was that agreed. I'm going to roll it a couple times, and I'll get you the big screen here. What on God's green earth scared him so much to not even. What is that? This man is making seven figures to play the game of football, a physical sport, a contact sport. Yeah, he's probably taking a lick from the safety here, who, by the way, he probably outweighs by a good 30 pounds. I mean, that wasn't even. What is this flailing? So, that one stuck out to me a little bit, not just because I had started Noah Gray in fantasy either. Um, that was just sort of a microcosm of the lack of talent past Travis Kelsey on this roster, just in the form of pass catchers at all. Um, Pass catchers is a term that might not be particularly applicable to this group that we saw last on Thursday night. Um, It was abysmal. It was one of the Kadarius Toney had three key drops, one of which hit him right in the hands, bounced right off his hands. Brian Branch took it back for a pick six. I've never seen a. I'm, I'm sure I have, but I, I can't recall a time I've seen a pick six that was less the quarterback's fault. I mean, that was a perfect ball right to his hands. There was another one on a deep crosser, that was a little bit behind him, but hit him in both hands, dropped it. There was that one on that mesh concept over the middle, where he and I think it was Sky Moore, kind of the ball came right at the mesh point, which isn't ideal. Um, but he just wasn't able to look that into his hands. I think Sky Moore kind of crossed his face and he lost it. Our buddy Silu on on Twitter posted a screenshot of Tony's hands that were essentially like this. And he said, looks like Tony was trying not to break a nail while catching this football. Um, which is, it's a funny joke, but it it is a serious problem for Kansas City going forward. Even once Travis Kelsey is back, that's not going to be a cure-all for what we saw last night. It's not. You need better production out of Sky Moore. You need better production out of Kadarius Toney. Rashid Rice looked pretty good in the second half, and I don't even know that he was targeted or in the first half, and I don't even think he was targeted in the second half. Marcus Valdez-Scantling made a couple of plays, caught all three of his targets, but he's not a number one guy. And again, once Travis Kelsey's back, he won't have to be, but you still need competent play from the rest of these skill position players if you want to be in the Super Bowl, if you want to be in the AFC Championship game. These things are pretty inexcusable, and it leaves you in a really tough spot. I mean, you've got to assume progression to the mean as far as the drops go. These are professional wide receivers. I don't expect anything that ridiculous again. But it's one of the funnier stats I saw was over the past 5 years, the lowest any wide receiver has graded on PFF is 40.5, and Kadarius Toney posted a 29.7 grade on Thursday night. He also posted a negative 2.13 EPA per target, expected points added. And Ben Solak posted this stat and said, in other words, for every 3 times you target Kadarius Toney, the defense scores a touchdown, which is insane. I don't want this to just be a Kadarius Toney video, but that was jarring. And you saw same thing from Sky Moore. You saw we just looked at that Noah Gray low light that I pulled from Twitter, and it was really rough. I think the Chiefs' O-line was fine. A lot's been made of the Jawaan Taylor deep sets. I think from what I've gathered from the real O-line heads, it was technically a penalty to set that deep where his helmet isn't over the waist of the center. It's deeper than that, and there may have been one in the mix, one false start, but it wasn't a lot of false starts. A lot of times, Jawaan Taylor just had the snap timed a lot better than Trey Smith next to him at right guard. And Jawaan Taylor was actually in sync with the snap of the ball from Creed Humphrey, and Smith was off his stance a little bit slower. So to the naked eye, a lot of times that looks like a false start because the center's not moving his entire body at the snap. He gets the snap off, brings his hands up. The tackles, Jawaan Taylor was getting into a jump set or like a kick set often to just combat the speed and ferocity with which Aiden Hutchins was rushing the passer, who had a great game, by the way. 5 pressures on 3rd and 4th down alone. And again, we haven't given any praise to the Lions yet this video. It was a well-played game. They were the team that didn't beat themselves, for which there's a lot to be said. You can internalize however you want to the decision to punt on of Dan Campbell to punt on the Kansas City 40. Sort of a cowardly call, which was in stark contrast to his fake punt call on his own 17. So he's an interesting character. You never know what you're going to get from Dan Campbell. But outside of that, they really didn't shoot themselves in the foot. They called both teams had some goofy, like 4th and short calls. The screen to Marvin Jones, or 3rd and short. The screen to Marvin Jones was okay. Is that the best we've got right now? St. Brown looked really good. Sam Laporta looked really good. Jahmyr Gibbs looked pretty good in limited snaps. Sort of a liability as a pass blocker, though, so he's not able to be utilized on 3rd downs as often as you'd like. But outside of that, Brian Branch obviously had the pick 6. Jack Campbell had some splash plays. You got excellent production from this rookie class that, a lot of people clowned on because of, the positional value or the high investment in a running back, a linebacker, a tight end. But it all paid off, a safety. But it all paid off. They all looked really good. C.J. Gardner-Johnson looked really good. Cam Sutton, for the most part, looked pretty good outside of the DPI. That was like a 42-yard penalty. Levi and Wuzurike looked really good. Finally back healthy. Was super excited to see him. Hutch obviously looked great. You had James Houston in the mix. Charles Harris looked good. You had, Josh Paschal out of Kentucky looked really good rushing often from like a 4-eye alignment over the guard just inside the tackle. And for the most part, it was a good, clean game from Detroit. But especially if you're a Kansas City fan or you had a rooting interest for Kansas City to beat the Lions. But if you're of one of those parties, a little tougher to stomach because there are several plays you can look back at and say, hey, if this is caught, the Chiefs probably win the game. Um, Mahomes, it reminded me of Super Bowl 54 a lot, um, just because it was relentless pressure and Mahomes just had to buy time on most snaps to give them a chance to gain positive yardage. The run game looked bad for Kansas City. Um, it was a tough showing. I said Travis Kelce's not going to be a cure-all, but he will help a lot of those things. I thought the KC defense looked really, really stout for not having Chris Jones or Charles Omenihu, particularly in the run defense. And you know Spags can crank it up a little bit, um, on third downs and with his pressures. But I thought guys like Kalen Saunders and George Karlaftis held up really well in the run game. Nick Bolton had a great game. Willie Gay had a decent game. Trent McDuffie was great um, in run fits off the edge, but there just wasn't quite enough juice on that team, and it's a state in which we haven't really seen Kansas City since Mahomes got there. This is probably the most vulnerable we've seen the Chiefs since he took over in his second year. Mahomes did. And maybe even before that, they had some good years with Alex Smith with a lot of talent around him. So there are some concerns for sure. You've got to hope that the Chris Jones contract gets worked out. You've got to hope that Kelsey's able to remain healthy for the rest of the season, and you don't have to deal with something like this again without your safety blanket and without any real juice on the offensive side. It was pretty mind blowing. I mean, I tweeted at one point, hey, there's no way in hell the Chiefs don't score on this drive. It was when they settled for field goals on back-to-back drives, made it 20-14. Lions come down and score, and you saw Mahomes on the sideline kind of do his nod, sort of reassuring the guys around him, like, okay, yep, give me the ball. We'll take it down. We'll win this game. And I was shocked to see that they didn't. But you look back at it, and he just didn't have help from his position, from his skill position guys. So it was really tough. But hats off to Detroit. That was a great statement win to go into to ruin the banner, hanging for Kansas City, and take a win and really make a statement. Again, I don't think it was the cleanest win. I think that the Chiefs probably should have won the game, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the Lions played them really tough and they didn't beat themselves. So I'm looking forward to what we see from the Chiefs moving forward. I'm really curious to see how much of a difference Kelsey actually makes when he comes back with this group around him. He's definitely going to open up some things, but there are some problems that we saw that I don't think he solves. Again, like I said, the defense looked pretty good. I think it's going to look really good with Chris Jones and Charles Omenihu. That secondary is awesome. And the linebackers are great. And if you get some more playmakers along the front, can generate some more pressure, I think this defense is going to be fine. As far as Detroit goes, they have some things to iron out as well, but there's a lot to take heart in coming off of this victory, and they should be riding high for a long week now until they get to next Sunday. So again, hats off to them. I hope they don't win any more games, but that was a fun one to watch, and a lot to learn from it. So we'll see how that changes and develops going forward for both of these teams, and we'll see how Sunday goes. But until then, Catch us Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central, breaking down all of the main slate action from Sunday and the Monday Night Football game right here on Bite Size Sports.